Here it is, guys. Today's message taken by our very own Mark Pomeroy.
Well, hey there, Elevate friends and family. Great to have you with us today as we launch a brand new series. Although this brand new series is kind of just us turning the page from the series we've just finished. We just finished a series called The World Spins Madly On Volume 1. And today we're launching a series called The World Spins Madly On Volume 2. In Volume 1, we looked at the life and lessons and leadership and faith of a prophet. Prophet is a spokesperson for God. A prophet named Elijah. And Elijah was used incredibly powerfully by God, demonstrated an incredible faith and courage, and was very much kind of referenced as the greatest prophet to have ever lived, or as we might call him today, the GOAT. So look, if you missed any of the messages in that series, head to your favorite podcast app, type in Elevate Church Perth, and you can catch up on those messages. Now we hit Volume 2. If you've got your smartphone camera, how about you scan this flow code? It's going to take you to 1 Kings chapter 19. And we're going to pick things up where God has said to Elijah that his time's coming to an end and that it's time to identify and ultimately commission his successor. And in fact, God told Elijah specifically who that successor was going to be. A person named Elisha. Okay, so pay attention. This is Elijah going to be identifying and appointing his successor, Elisha. So Elijah went and found Elisha, son of Shaphat, plowing a field. There were 12 teams of oxen in the field, and Elisha was plowing with the 12th team. Elijah went over to him and threw his cloak across his shoulders and then walked away. So here we have Elisha, the soon-to-be successor to the GOAT. He's entered the pages of history, but I want you to notice he's not found teaching like a rabbi or a scholar in the temple. Elijah doesn't find him serving as a minister in the ranks of the king. No, he finds Elisha standing behind a pair of oxen plowing a field. Likely looked something like this. I mean, hello, what a view. No corner office here, and what's that smell? I think it's a thing that you just stepped in with your open-toed sandals. Ew. Nothing glamorous. Plowing. Get up, harness the oxen, and plow. Days seemingly looking just like the one before. The view, not very enviable. And yet this is the guy that God handpicked to take over from the GOAT. And I wonder if some of you can relate to Elisha in this moment. You know, teachers, every day you're showing up to school and you're looking at the same kids and often dealing with the same issues. Parents, you know, every day you're raising the same kids and you're playing taxi to sports practice, you're doing another load of laundry, you're serving and preparing another round of meals. You know, those of you in the workforce or business owners, you're getting up when the alarm tells you to get up, you're making your commute, and you're showing up to the same workplace, being told to meet the same sales quotas, dealing with the same boss, the same colleagues, performing the same tasks. But here's some encouragement right off the bat from Elisha, and that is, don't allow your current perspective to overshadow God's purpose. Nothing about Elisha's day, about his current place in life, looked like God had much purpose for him beyond just routine, rigmarole, monotony. And yet here comes Elijah, wrapped his cloak around him. Well, Elisha left the oxen standing there and ran after Elijah and said to him, okay, all right, first let me go and kiss my father and mother goodbye, and then I will go with you. See, Elisha understood that by Elijah wrapping his cloak around him, this was symbolic of Elijah passing the baton over to Elisha. But that's all he knew. In that moment, that's all Elisha knew, and he committed to following Elijah. He didn't know any details. He didn't know what would come next, where, when, how, nothing. He just knew that God was in this and God was calling him. But right there, that can be a sticking point for some people. Like, I don't know the details, and until I do, I'm not willing to say yes to God in this setting. You know, he was living with family, he was living with colleagues and workers on the family property. Things were familiar, things were comfortable, and based on familiarity and comfort, he could have said no. And this is another very common sticking point. You know, for too many people, the thought of venturing into uncharted territory, into the unfamiliar, terrifies them. And so instead of taking next steps of forward progress, they take the same steps as yesterday and end up doing laps rather than making forward progress. But again, thankfully, Elisha knew that God was calling him, and he was willing to say yes, even though he didn't know the details. And he was willing to give up familiarity and comfort and go with Elijah. One moment he's following oxen, the next moment he's following the greatest of all time. And he's a poster boy for the reality that you don't have to understand fully to obey immediately. And this word obey is the key. Yes, Elisha had been called, but calling counts for nothing without obedience. See, being used by God has actually got more to do with our obedience than our ability. You could have all of the ability in the world, the skills, the experience, the capacity, and God wants to deploy all of those things, but they count for nothing if you don't show up to play. See, the greatest ability that we can bring to God is actually our availability. And over decades of church leadership, I have seen countless people with incredible ability, incredible capacity, huge spiritual gifts that God's entrusted to them. And they've either not shown up to play, or they've shown up and they have stuck around for a very, very, very short time, shone brightly, and then disappeared. A shooting star, if you like. But this is the reality about shooting stars, is that shooting stars never have a lasting impact. Shooting stars don't build something significant. Everything worth building takes time. And yet, by contrast, I have also seen countless people with modest ability, modest capacity, limited experience, who have presented to God their availability consistently over weeks and months and years and decades. And I have seen those very same people grow, not necessarily spectacularly, literally, slowly and steadily, but consistently. They've consistently showed up to play, and their effectiveness has grown steadily and consistently. The greatest thing we can bring to God is our availability. So here's a question. Is there something that God has called you to that you've previously said no, or that you've been kind of putting off answering God, hoping He'll just kind of stop asking? Maybe you've said no, or you're procrastinating because you want all the details. Maybe you've said no, you're procrastinating because you don't want to abandon your comfort and familiarity. Maybe you've said no, or you're procrastinating because you don't feel capable of what God's calling you to. And what could those things be? To join an Elevate team. There's an example, and you're like, oh, I don't know, God. Maybe it's a business idea or a change of careers that God's calling you to, and you've said no, or you are putting off answering Him. Maybe it's taking a first step or a next step in giving financially, but you're like, I need to know that this is going to work before I do it. Maybe it's taking a course of study, further education, something that's going to position you for more opportunities. Is there something that God has called you to that you've previously said no to, or you're currently procrastinating? The greatest ability that we can bring to God is our availability. So Elisha returned to his oxen and slaughtered them. Hello. And he used the wood from the plow to build a fire to roast their flesh, and he passed around the meat to the townspeople, and they all ate. And then he went with Elijah as his assistant. What was that all about? Well, in 1519, the year 1519, Herman Cortez, a Spanish military officer, arrived on the shores of Mexico with his crew. And the brief was that they were going to make their way inland, which was likely going to be a hostile environment, and likely they were going to encounter hostile people. But the goal was to colonize the area. And Herman Cortez did something quite remarkable. He first burnt the ships that had carried him and his crew to Mexico. He burnt the ships so that they would not have the option of turning back, of going back. When things got tough, when things got challenging, when things were unknown, when they were tempted to say, it's too hard, I can't do this anymore. He first burnt the ships. No turning back. And we see this very same principle at play with Elisha. See, for someone to have one pair of oxen in that time would have actually symbolized they were reasonably wealthy. But his family actually had 12 pairs of oxen, 24 altogether, and the employees that actually drove the plows. That indicates that they were very wealthy. And so Elisha took the bold and decisive option of killing and burning the plows and cooking the cows, burning his inheritance, burning his backup plan, burning his plan B, ensuring that for Elisha, there was no turning back. And I've never owned oxen, so therefore I've never slaughtered oxen. But for me, when I was 26, I left a very successful and attractive corporate job, and I went to Bible college. I didn't know where things would lead, but I made the decision that there was no turning back. I didn't choose to study part-time, not suggesting there's anything wrong with that, but that for me wasn't what I felt God calling me to. You know, we have people at Elevate who have moved interstate or moved overseas to be here, be in Perth, be part of Elevate Church, and they left. They left familiarity, friends, family. In some cases, they didn't even know why God was calling them to Perth. But they did it. No turning back. So is there something for you that you need to burn the plows? A toxic relationship that you need to call it done and move on? Small or broken thinking that you need to check in with a counselor to say, I need to burn the plows and I need to create some new and better ways of thinking. You know, I know of people who have traded their smartphone and gone back in time to a dumb phone purely because they wanted to break their pornography addiction. And having a portable computer with them at all times was not healthy. And so they burnt the plows. This week I heard about a family who had been in the habit. They bought themselves a holiday home near a body of water. They'd bought a boat to go with the holiday home, and they would spend every weekend through the entire summer, every year, at their holiday home. Ergo, never attending church during the summer. Until one day, the 9-year-old daughter asked her dad, "Hey Dad, how come we don't love God in the summer?" Oof. Well, to his credit, the dad sold the holiday home and the boat and reset their priorities as a family. He burnt the plows, no turning back. And all of these stories indicate that obedience isn't always easy, that obedience will likely cost you something, that obedience could cause people in your sphere to question you. Why in the world is he burning the oxen? But obedience is the critical ingredient to you stepping into greater kingdom purpose. Now, we're going to continue looking and learning from Elisha over the next few weeks, but I just want to show you one more thing, one final thought as Elisha is stepping into his destiny, greater kingdom purpose. When he said yes to following Elijah and entering God's call on his life, made one of the boldest, most audacious requests in recorded history. Check this out. When they came to the other side, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me what I can do for you before I'm taken away." It's like, I'll grant you one wish kind of thing. And Elisha replied, "Please let me inherit a double share of your spirit and become your successor." I don't just want to do what you did. I want to be twice as effective. This was Elijah who, during his lifetime, saw the first ever recorded resurrection in history, called fire down from heaven, prayed that it would stop raining, and then prayed later on that it would start raining. And ultimately, there were 12 pretty spectacular miracles recorded, credited to Elijah and his faith. Well, guess what? In Elisha's lifetime, there were twice the number of recorded miracles, 24 altogether. So, hey, here's my invitation. As we move into The World Spins Madly On Volume 2, learning now from the life of Elisha. Dive in, be here, bring someone, be inspired, because there's more blessing that God wants to bring to you, and there's more kingdom purpose that God wants to do through you. So step away from your security and step towards your destiny.